This is RT from Moscow. One main story dominating our news tonight. A plane carrying a triple champion ice hockey team, Lokomotiv Yaroslavl, has crashed earlier this evening, 270 kilometers northeast of Moscow. 2 people out of the 45 on board are thought to have survived the disaster, but they're in a critical condition. Let's catch up with our correspondent on the scene now, Sean Thomas. He's there with the latest for us as the hours draw on here. This, of course, happened early evening Moscow time, and as the hours have gone by, Sean, more eyewitness accounts have come into us throughout the night, recounting the horror of what they saw.
Well, that's true, Kevin. Of course, it is a very tragic night for everyone here in Yaroslavl, as Yaroslavl Lokomotiv was a favorite. It was a 3-time champion of the KHL, so a very tragic night for this city and for the country and for hockey in general. People who saw the plane, eyewitnesses of the account, say that they witnessed a plane going up, a Yak-42, not making enough speed or lift to get off the ground high enough. It then clipped a beacon and went down in a ball of flames. We had the opportunity to speak to some people who witnessed this in person, and this is what they had to say about the accident.
After the plane took off, I heard a noise like 2 cars colliding. Several seconds later, we heard another bang. Then the plane started leaning to the right. After we heard the second bang, the plane suddenly dived and hit the ground. I didn't see it hit the ground, but we saw that its tail broke off. The plane broke in 2.
We heard a plane take off, so we told our granddaughter, look, there's going to be an airplane. Then I heard a bang and my daughter told me, Mom, it's falling down to the side. Then came the flames and the smoke and we wanted to run away, but we didn't know where to run. Then we went to the river and saw the plane.
Lokomotiv is my home team. We supported it. We loved this team and we were shocked when we found out. We went to all of their games. Knew all of them by name. It's very difficult.
And on a personal note, we were on the train, and as the news of this tragedy started to spread through the train and people who were on their way to Yaroslavl started hearing the news, you could see how personally it touched people who are from the Yaroslavl area. One lady sitting next to us burst out into tears and told us that one of her family members actually had the final meal with the team before they headed off to the airport, and said that they were all in great spirits and ready to go for their first game of the season. And, of course, this ended in tragedy, heartbreak for everyone here.
Lives taken so tragically tonight, as you say, Sean, Alexander Galimov.
Certainly, Kevin. In fact, he was a much-loved player, not just important for Lokomotiv, but important for the national team as well. As you mentioned, he is the only survivor of the 37 team members, coaches, and crew that were on this flight. There was one other survivor who was a member of the crew as well. But as you mentioned, burns over 90% of his body, including his respiratory system as well. Doctors at the hospital here in Yaroslavl have said that he has already undergone multiple surgeries, including surgeries to help repair his damaged respiratory system. So a hard fight ahead, and anyone who is familiar with burns over a certain percentage of your body, the survival rate is not very good. So tough times ahead for the family and also for Alexander as well.
Of course, our thoughts very much with the family, friends and loved ones of all those that have perished. As the rescue operation turns to a recovery operation over the next 24 hours or so, I mean, it's still early days, and you did go into it just now, but, I mean, investigators are going to be next on the scene trying to find out what went so terribly wrong. Every time you hear, and it does happen maybe once a year, twice a year, of an air crash here in Russia involving one of the older Soviet-type aircrafts, I'm thinking the Tupolovs or now this Yak-42, the suspicion always falls on the aircraft and its rather old design. But, of course, it depends who you talk to, Sean, doesn't it? Because I was speaking to a well-seasoned American Airlines pilot earlier on, and I know we've spoken to servicemen before who fly planes, and they say it doesn't always matter how old the plane is, it's basically down to how well this thing is serviced. Sometimes they can be more reliable than the newer models. Any mileage in that?
Well, indeed. In fact, actually, if you look at the Yak-42 itself, and we can talk about that more in a bit, the plane has been around since 1975. It was the first plane that was designed by the Soviet Union to uphold to international standards. We don't know how well this particular plane was serviced, but it was a private charter jet. But again, they are looking at possibly human error in terms of the pilot making a wrong decision that led to the tragedy. Also, there are some early indications in the investigation that there could be some technical malfunctions as well. Of course, Vladimir Putin, the Prime Minister, ordered the Transportation Minister to come immediately to the scene to launch an investigation. As always is the case when something like this happens in Russia, there's always a quick response to make sure that they get down to the bottom to find out exactly what went wrong. That investigation is ongoing right now. People on the scene. In fact, you can actually still smell some of the burning in the air, so it's very shortly after the incident. But again, what we do know is that the plane failed to get enough altitude, hit some sort of a beacon or an antenna at the end of the runway, and went into a ball of flames. So right now they're going to be poring over that scene over the next few days to make sure that they know exactly what went wrong.
Sean, the other news tonight as well was that the entire Yak-42 fleet operating in Russia, there are about 100 of them, has been grounded temporarily while investigators try and work out what's gone wrong. We don't know when they'll be given the green light to be airworthy again. One other point actually that came through earlier on tonight, very early into this, we heard that particular plane had to renew its airworthiness certificate. It was due up in about 3 weeks' time. I put that to that airline pilot, the American Airlines pilot. He wanted to know more details about what the relevance of that was. It may have just been a standard thing where it was up for renewal, but that was an interesting point that came out. Just briefly, Sean, before you go, in about 30 seconds or so, it's very hard, isn't it, to describe how much of a shock this is for Yaroslavl. Earlier on this evening, we saw hundreds upon hundreds of fellow citizens in Yaroslavl pouring out onto the streets, didn't we?
Certainly. In fact, hundreds of people coming out to pay their respects, chanting team slogans for Lokomotiv. But this isn't just a tragedy for Yaroslavl. It's an international tragedy as well. There were members on this team from Sweden, Ukraine, Czech Republic, Belarus, of course, Russia, Canada as well. So it was an international event, and not just for sports and hockey in general, but there are ambassadors and embassies that are sending their regrets as well. President Medvedev tomorrow is changing his schedule at the International Forum so that he can come and actually pay his respects at the scene of the accident as well. So very tragic with world leaders paying their respects at this incident.
All right, Sean Thomas for RT, live from Yaroslavl tonight. Thank you for bringing us up to date with what you know there. A bit earlier, I spoke to RT Sports presenter Kate Partridge. She says today's catastrophe is not the first such tragedy to strike Russian sport. Awful events tonight. It's being regarded and talked about now as Russia's worst sporting disaster.
Absolutely. I mean, with the loss of effectively a whole team completely gone in one fell swoop, it is indeed a tragedy. But it does also bring to mind a similar disaster we were looking through, and also some of my colleagues reminded me of this, of the Paktekor disaster, which was also that was a mid-air crash that happened in 1979 in the Dnipro, which is in the Ukraine. And what had happened is the Paktekor team had been promoted. They were also going off to play Dynamo Minsk in a football match, and they collided with another plane mid-air. 1979 August, 17 players plus officials gone completely. And
of course, talking about looking back at the archives, that event in Great Britain as well back in the 70s.
Absolutely. There are events looking through. I mean, we found at least 11 different crashes. I mean, the main one that definitely I can think of mainly in England is Munich, Manchester United 1958, the Busby Babes, and also even as late as 1993 the Zambian national football team as well in a plane crash.
So many international hockey stars have perished in the disaster. The shock of this tragedy is being felt not only very greatly here in Russia, but also, of course, around the world, isn't it? Absolutely.
So many of the hockey teams now, particularly in the KHL, not only attract Russian players, they attract players from all around the world. Also the NHL, who also sent their condolences. We were looking at 8 or 9 different nationalities. Some of the stars, Karel Rachunek, Jan Marek, the Czech Republic, Pavel Dimitrov, Slovakia, all these international players. The repercussions here are not just Russian, they're global. We've also been talking about how how the teams carry on, how the city can carry on having lost. We can see the pictures there of the fans, how devastated they can be. In this particular instance, all the other teams within the top flight, a voluntary player went to play for them. And this is something that has been suggested by commentators like Alexander Kuzmak and other famous sports commentators across Russia. And now we can hear from the KHL president, Alexander Medvedev.
A plane carrying the Lokomotiv team crashed right after the takeoff from Yaroslavl. According to the latest information, only one player has survived. Our teams don't think they can continue the match after such news. Thank you for your understanding and supporting this decision. Now let's commemorate the players who have passed away with the minute of silence.
That's Alexander Medvedev, the president of the Continental Hockey League, and of course comment as well coming through tonight as well from the president of the Ice Hockey Federation of Russia, Vladislav Tretiak.
We offer our condolences to the families and the club. I must say it is a huge loss for Russian ice hockey because there were a lot of good players in Yaroslavl. So we will do everything to find out the causes of the tragedy, to support the families and help the sport live on in Yaroslavl, to honor those who died in the disaster.
Well, as very much as Vladislav Tretiak says there, this is all about rebuilding the communities, rebuilding a hockey community. And there have been suggestions, because it's effectively the end of the team. There is a famous commentator, Alexander Kuzmak, who suggested that perhaps other teams maybe donate players and help in the rebuilding of the city and also of the team.
Kate Partridge, a sports correspondent with me.